The final thing I want to go over are some variables that automatically exist inside of your Bildr pages, specifically with the repeating list element. I want to go over how it works inside of Bildr, why it's a little bit unique, and how it automatically creates some variables available specifically on the row pages themselves from the data that gets set into the element. So let's click on our page here and click on our repeating list element and go over to data. We will go over all about how to use data throughout your entire Bildr application in another video. What I want to show you is that this specific repeating list element is tied to a specific set of data in Bildr called our tasks. And so for every task that we have in the data, we are going to display one task list row on the page. The really unique thing about our repeating list element, when the page loads, it gets what's called a JSON array of data, whether that's from a Bildr collection or an external collection that you get via an API, you're giving it a JSON array of data. And every row is an object in that JSON array. You don't have to master anything about those arrays today. Later on, it'll be useful, and we'll have a whole video talking about JSON formatting of data and how to use it. But the important thing is that this JSON array of data is going to have a variety of values in each object. So in each task, they each have some values. You can tell here, we're actually getting all of the fields associated with tasks. So if we jump over to tasks, we see we have a few different fields here. We have task, we have created by, modified date, ID, created date, status ID, and notes. And so all of these values here will all exist as a variable inside of your list row page. So what is that variable named is a really important thing to know. When you click on any field in a data collection in Bildr, you're going to see field ID. Our default fields that exist for every record are these four right here, and their value is always exactly what you see at the top right here. Now, when you choose a custom field that you've added, that field actually has a unique value right here. And so typically when you set data into a page, we are using this value right here as a variable attached to that data record. You can switch to use the named value as well. So if we look over here, we have a toggle where we're pulling from a data collection to use field names. And I could go ahead and say, I want that to be true. In this case, if we do that, we're going to go ahead and use the field names instead of those IDs. The advantage of using IDs is that's never going to change on you. You might decide you want to change the name of a field at some point in the future. And if you do that, but you've used logic using those field name variables, all of your logic might break. If you always use the ID, you know that you never have to worry about that ID changing value. So we're going to go ahead and continue to keep that false for now. And so the important thing is that because of the magic of the repeating list element, Bildr will automatically get this big set of data in this JSON format and unravel it and display it in the pages that you've given it for every object. This is an especially important concept for external data because you're going to get data sets of arrays of data that are going to have named values inside of that data set. And when you're creating a row page to reflect external data, you can use that variable binding and just grab it from a variable's name instead of having to run a flow like set element. To demonstrate this, let's go ahead and turn off all of our binding on our objects inside of these rows. So when we load up a page now, this will go away. We'll still get all of our tasks, but they're not going to have any values because we haven't tied them to any sort of data. This is the record. So all of the data from that record exists right here, but I didn't tell it to put the name of the task here, so it hasn't done that. Another way to do this, instead of tying it to a field, I could tie it to a variable value. It's important to know, typically with Bildr data collections, you're going to be using fields from a data collection that you can name, but sometimes with external data collections, you're not going to be able to do that. And so the variable becomes really useful for you. So if we go over here and we select our data collection, what I'm looking for is I actually want the ID of the task field. So I've copied that, and I'm going to use from variable and put it right here. So if I come over here and load this page now, we're going to see our name field is populating just like it did before I removed the data binding, because I'm setting it with essentially the same exact value. I'm just setting it in a different way, showing you how to use a variable instead of the field binding. A final example with the repeating list is this concept of what order that particular task is in the row that you're looking at. And this is stored in a value called the array index. And so every single repeating list row that you have will automatically have a variable value given it called array index. To show you this, let me go ahead and set the array index variable directly on the name in the particular task row. Now, the important thing to know about the array index is that in programming, things start at 0, not at 1. So typically what we're going to see is the number 0 for the first value, and then the 1 for the second value, and so on and so forth. So when I data bind the variable underscore array index to this name, and then I load up our app page, what we're going to see is instead of the name of the actual task, we're going to see its actual position inside the entire repeating list. There's a lot of different types of logic that you might do depending on where a specific row exists inside of a list. And the array index variable is going to give you that information available on every single page that you have in any repeating list element you ever use.